touching on the top prop bets in the NBA today. All right, everyone, welcome back into another PrizePicks video. Looking at the board for today is going to be a classic Monday board, which most likely means we're probably going to be a little hands-offish today, unfortunately, but there are some good props that we're getting as I'm recording this video. But I do want to touch on a little update that I was doing over the weekend. Some of you guys probably noticed that I didn't do any weekend videos. And typically speaking, the weekends are the ones in which we are getting the biggest edges. So I kind of felt bad not being able to put out any picks or anything like that. The reason why is I was working on updates on this little page, my tool on my website. A lot of you guys are familiar with this. Updated the odds pulling in here. So it's going to update every hour, and it's pulling in from like 8 different sources right now. So we can get the average sportsbook odds. I'm excited for that. And then I also added in some college basketball and also some NHL props. I just did the NHL this morning, actually. So I'm excited to get into that as well. So if you guys are ever wondering if I'm not like coming out with a video, it's literally because I'm working on something else. That's literally it. It's pretty much work every day. But looking at, we're going to touch on some NHL props here, and it's going to flow just like the NBA DFS board. So looking at right now, we can see we're getting 2 over bets on average across the sports books for minus 140 or better. Remember, we are always searching for at least like minus 137. I typically like to round up to minus 138 on average across the sports books. So we're getting 2 that are favoring the over shots on goal. Connor McDavid is extremely interesting for the over shots on goal here, just given the fact that over the last 5 games, he's been only over this once, but we can see like his shot percentage has been down a little bit. We look at a game against San Jose earlier this year, 5 shots on goal. So it does make sense for him to eventually get back up there. But a lot of people will see this. Hasn't hit 4 out of the last 5. They probably get a little bit too scared. It's up to you guys to decide. I just like to call it the best value-based bets that we were getting. And then Lucas as well. It's favored at minus 140 for over 1.5 shots on goal. Certainly can roll with that. Obviously, Chicago, low shot on goal team in general. But those are the 2 best bets that we're getting in NHL. It did seem like we were going to get this one as well. This one was set at minus 140 earlier today. It has since dropped down to minus 135 on average. And we do see that PrizePicks is adjusting the props down. Okay, so these are the ones in which are not matching up at all. Okay, we can see they're heavily adjusting for kind of their mispriced props already. And so the best bet that we're getting on paper is going to be Terry Rozier over 6 assists, which is very interesting because I believe this one started at 5.5 this morning. Okay, some sportsbooks are saying it should be set at 6.5. Okay, and they're heavily favoring that over as well at minus 150. So on average, this is one of the best bets that we're getting. Now, the only issue I have with this one is that he's not projected to get over. This is a typical Monday morning prop where the odds are favoring the over here. They're all suggesting that we should bet the over. The projections are not. So it's really for you guys to decide what you want to do with it. I, for one, typically like to roll with the odds. You know, if we do that in the long term, it's going to pay off. And so I think I will take this. But, you know, if it doesn't hit, we're going to come back to the projection and see why. Now, I will say this is a very appealing game. This is probably the most appealing game on tonight's slate in terms of a game that is projected to stay close. 2-point spread, 233.5. This number has actually went up. It started, I think, at 231 this morning. So I think this is going to be a pretty appealing game. And obviously, if it is a higher scoring game than someone like Terry Rozier, should be getting some assists. And so very similar to this was Spencer Dinwiddie yesterday. It was basically the exact same one. And obviously, I was kind of testing out the updates throughout the weekend. And he crushed it. So it's a small sample size, but I kind of like that. Then we have some other ones where we are favoring the over, and we are getting some projections that are favoring the over as well. Tobias Harris, over points, set 11.5, projected to get 13.4. Don't hate it. Nick Richards as well, over rebounds at 8.5. Not exactly one that I love, but at the same time, Miles Turner isn't getting a ton of minutes lately. And so if Miles Turner's minutes continue to be limited to under 30 and Isaiah Jackson's injured, and part of the reason why Miles Turner's minutes have been limited is because he's been getting into foul trouble. But like if Richards does get around 30 minutes, he should be able to get over 8.5 rebounds. Definitely not a lock and load, but sportsbooks are favoring the over. I don't hate it. Here's a very interesting one that I kind of want to call out for later on in this video. DeMar DeRozan over 4.5 assists, and let's just call it out right now. We are seeing that the sportsbooks are definitely disagreeing with where his points and assists should be set at. We're seeing minus 140 for over, minus 140 for under for average odds. That's because some lines are suggesting this line is wrong, and obviously that's why it's set at 27.83. We're seeing some discrepancy across the sportsbooks that I'm pulling this in. I'm pulling in from 8 different sportsbooks right now. We're seeing a big discrepancy there. Kind of crazy. And I think that this is a direct result of DeMar DeRozan just going off lately. And so they're kind of saying tougher matchup, should come down eventually. This is not going to continue to be there. I probably would favor the over. I probably would favor continue to ride the hot hand. I'm just kind of not touching it right now, but yeah, I don't mind that one. But like if we were betting this one, might as well do assists at the same time. But we can see we're getting a lot of decent over bets, none that feel like locking loads. And this is honestly just a typical thing on Mondays. Like I mentioned, like the weekend boards, they are just highly appealing. That's why I did the live stream in the last video, because we were just getting a board that was insanely good value. We just don't get that on Mondays. And so like looking at the best under bet that we're getting is Vooch under 10.5 rebounds. Obviously going against Joel Embiid, that does make sense, but probably one that I'm not really touching. And then if we look at over bets where the numbers aren't matching up, we can kind of see why they're being propped that way. We're seeing under -155 for Tobias Harris, under 5.5. We can see why PrizePicks would be adjusting it down. So we don't really get any great lock and load over bets that where the numbers are not matching up. The best one on paper would be Embiid over 10.5 rebounds, favored at -130. Average sportsbooks kind of have it set at 10.63. So a little bit of an edge there, but once again, projected to get 10.11, so not a perfect one. And then we are getting some fantasy score ones. Obviously, if Tobias Harris is scoring some points, then he's also going to be getting there for fantasy score. Aaron Naismith, this one is an extremely interesting prop here because to me, this one very much seems risk reward based. I think the reason why we're getting it at a lower number than what we have seen him do recently is simply because Bennett Mathurin could be back and Chris Durante could be back. Now, currently, Mathurin is not in the starting lineup. So that would suggest, in the projected starting line. So that would suggest that he's not going to play. I would say this is very much contingent on Mathurin not playing. But if we look at his per 36 numbers, with just Tyrese Haliburton off the court, Aaron Naismith does average about 26.3 fantasy points per 36. 13.6 points, 5.3 rebounds, 1.2 assists, and about a steal and a block. Sorry, 1 steal and block. Going against Charlotte, we can see why this number would be too low. And so if we look at his minutes lately with those players off the court, that's been the biggest reason why he's been able to get there. Okay. 32 minutes, 31 minutes, 31 minutes, only 21 against Detroit. That was kind of strange. And then 38 minutes. And we can see he has been getting, at least a block or a steal in there. That really helps on something like PrizePicks. It's really huge. And so also using just the DraftKings price points here. And this is something I called out in another video that I did, kind of comparing PrizePicks and DraftKings. If we just take what his 5x here would be, obviously that'd be around 25 DraftKings points. So we can already see that this number, just using the DraftKings salary, would suggest that this is too low. But once again, this is very much predicated on one or both of those players sitting, Mathurin or Durante. And for what it's worth, with Mathurin off the court, Naismith gets the second most minutes on the team, then it's Andrew Nembhard, then TJ McConnell. He averages 29 fantasy points per 36, which is about a 2 bump in his fantasy points per 36. So pretty good play on paper today. And guys, look at it. The last 2 games he did this against Philly and Milwaukee. Now he gets a good matchup against Charlotte. That is intriguing to me. It does make sense. And I think part of the reason would be if also Isaiah Jackson's questionable if he sits as well, and Miles Turner continues to get into foul trouble, 5 fouls, 4, 6, 6. If that continues to happen, I could see why they would shift to a smaller lineup. And obviously then he would still get minutes. So I really don't mind this one. It makes sense. And then I did want to find a play to play Andrew Nembhard as well. And I guess it would be points, rebounds, and assists. You look at his per 36 numbers with Haliburton and Mathurin off the court. Once again, he gets the 3rd most minutes using that sample. Averages about 17.4 points, 3 rebounds, and 6.6 assists. So in theory, using per 36 numbers, he should be able to get the over. The issue with that is he's not going to get 36 minutes, most likely. Okay, because last game, 37 minutes. Against the Bucks, 28 minutes. Against Detroit, 36 minutes. And so what does this tell us just looking at this? With those players out, his minutes have been all over the place. We can't really trust the minutes. This is very much I don't mind doing a game stack here. We could do points, rebounds, and assists for Mathurin here. We could do fantasy score for Aaron Naismith. Buddy Hields honestly seems too low. He averages 36.7 fantasy points per 36 with Haliburton and Mathurin off the court. And his minutes really have been capped too as well, which is a little bit worrisome, but wouldn't be shocking to see him get there in this matchup against Charlotte. Much more appealing matchup. And let's look at this game log. So against Detroit was able to get there. Obviously they've been banged up. Against Houston was able to get there. A game that we would attack. Against Detroit only played 22 minutes because that game was basically instantly a blowout. Against Milwaukee and Philly, we wouldn't have been targeting him. Still came close to getting the over. It does make sense. So if we're running out of game stack, I really don't mind the idea of going with the Pacers over. They all seem to be a little bit too low, but I also think that's because we don't have the guarantee of Mathurin and Durante sitting. And so if we're doing that, we'd probably have to try to force in maybe Kelly Oubre or just go with the Terry Rozier over assists. Now, I will say, if Terry Rozier is going to get that over assist, that to me says that someone like Kelly Oubre, maybe PJ Washington are going off. We also saw that the Nick Richards rebound prop was a good prop. And so if we look at Kelly Oubre in the last game against Philly, we can see the game was a blowout, only played 31 minutes, went 2 for 12, 0 for 6. One, tough matchup. Two, he had a cold night shooting. What do we typically like to do after a cold night shooting? Attack, because typically speaking, they're going to regress back to their average, regress back to their mean in a positive way. So I really don't mind the idea. And if we're betting on Rozier to get over 6 assists, it's going to be because someone like Kelly Oubre is going off. And for what it's worth, like, this does seem too low for PJ Washington in this matchup. Don't really have a lean either way with that. I know I spent a lot of time on that game, but it is an appealing game to me. We do have Quentin Grimes. He seems to be always popping up for over fantasy points. And if we just look at what his average fantasy line should be based off of the odds that we were getting, based off of points, rebounds, and assists across the sportsbook, it should be set at 15.1. So we are getting a decent edge there. The issue with this, not sexy. He's someone that more times than not will get the over, but also very hit or miss. So for what it's worth, like, across the DFS space, I do DraftKings and FanDuel coverage on Occupy Fantasy's YouTube. Rudy Gobert is very much the chalk, and he's like 7.2 on DraftKings. So for him to be extreme chalk at 7.2 as a salary, 7,200, which would suggest that his 5x would be around 35 fantasy points. If he's extreme chalk, they're pretty much saying he's going to score 40 fantasy points. So everyone's on Rudy Gobert tonight. So that would kind of suggest that this fantasy score is simply too low for him. 32.5 fantasy points. So I would agree, with the public here that chalky Rudy Gobert at 32.5 fantasy points does seem too low. He does average around 40 fantasy points per 36 with Ant-Man off the court and with Karl-Anthony Towns off the court. And so that's something we need to wait confirmation for, is that Anthony Edwards is going to sit. If he doesn't, it doesn't really hurt Rudy Gobert too much. But that's why we're not getting any Kyle Anderson prop yet, or Ant-Man props as well. So this line for Horton Tucker is pretty crazy, okay? I was thinking that we were going to get a good fantasy prop line on Horton Tucker. We're not. We're just not. But the thing with it is, it's like, you look at it, Jordan Clarkson, Mike Conley's obviously on a different team, and Colin Sexton, they're off the court. So if we pull in the sample with Horton Tucker, looking at Horton Tucker with those three off the court, Horton Tucker averages 21 points, 6.4 rebounds, 6.9 assists, and about 0.8 steals and 0.9 blocks and 4.5 turnovers with those players off the court for a usage rate of 28% and 39.7 fantasy points per 36. So that would suggest that this is going to be too low, especially given this matchup against the Kings, where if we look at the game over and under, this went down a little bit. It started at 240, but still 238.5, that's very high. And it is a game that could maybe be a blowout, but still not too much blowout risk there just yet at 6 points. So there is hopefully a way in which we can attack Horton Tucker, but it's probably not points, rebounds, and assists either. That's tough. It's probably just a stay away. That's unfortunate. Maybe just more of a DFS play. Let's see his turnovers here, because if he's going to be handling the point guard duties and he doesn't have one, darn it, 4.5 turnovers. So we might get that one throughout the day. We'll see. Any blocks on him or steals? Blocks and steals? Nothing. That's unfortunate. I thought we were going to get something good from him, because he's going to step up into a higher usage role tonight, most likely. So now just getting back into the board, there is one interesting points prop here that does feel like it's too good for us not to use. So we're looking at RJ Barrett is favored to get under 19 points at -130. PrizePicks has the line currently set at 19.5. That's a pretty big edge there. Not only are the under odds at -130, but the sportsbook line is set at 19. So in theory, this should be a pretty strong one that we're going to get. And the points projection is also under that as well. He is very much hit or miss, could really break a slate, can really not do anything. So it really just depends on what he does. And then just real quickly for what it's worth, these are the best fantasy over bets that we were getting on the slate. Vooch over, quickly over. That's interesting there. Brunson, Harris, Naismith, we see popping up there. DeMar DeRozan. Just for what it's worth, just so you guys can see that. So looking at the bets for today, I did mention I was going to try to be running out some sort of a game stack in that Indy-Charlotte game. So this is kind of going to be it. I do think we get to attack that individually as well in a game stack. This is more, the game stack would be more for people that only bet like 5 or 6 like bets each day, where obviously they're just trying to hit like 1 out of 18 of those to have a profit, or whatever they're trying to do there. Which I'm fine with. That can be a strategy. I think that game is a good one to attack using that strategy. And so once again, the bets of the day are very much, where do you think the best bet is here? Obviously, we went through, did the whole process to find what the best bets are on the slate. It's for you guys to decide which two you think are the best. We got RJ Barrett under 19.5 points. Average sportsbook line has it set at 19, and they are favoring the under at -130. Good odds there. Aaron Naismith, this is very much predicated on the fact that hopefully Benedict Mathurin and Chris Durante sit. If Mathurin plays, this one's going to be tougher to hit, okay? We're very much betting on the injury situation. Can he still get there if Mathurin plays? Yes. Is it much more likely for him to get there if Mathurin sits? Yes. It's very much a risk-reward based thing, but obviously we're gambling. We're just trying to gain an edge on the sports books, on PrizePicks here, really, by making this bet. Rudy Gobert, extreme chalk in DFS today. And so I will say the chalk in like DraftKings and FanDuel hasn't hit as much recently. That typically happens end of season NBA DFS. And he's currently questionable. He could sit. If he does, it's going to open up a bunch of value. But looking like a pretty strong play, just in general. Once again, if we kind of use the 5x of his salary on DraftKings, 7.2, just in general, this number would already look too low. And so I kind of agree with that. The Buddy Hield play, this is very much part of the stack with Indy. Lucas here, I was looking at the game log since the trade deadline for hockey. He has been playing for one, okay? But he's only had less than one shot on goal once. So 0 shots on goal once. So I'll pull up his game log here. So over the past month, and that was his fourth game. But he's had at least one in every other game besides that. And so at the very least, it should be a close one, right? We're obviously hoping for 2. Favorite at minus 140. We'll take that. And then Terry Rozier, this was like the best odds bet that we were getting on the day, for over 6 assists. All right, that was all, guys. Felt good to be back. Just a reminder, though, Mondays, the boards are tight. It's literally been my worst day of the year thus far. Probably shouldn't have honestly done a video today, and I wish I could go back in time and do them on the weekends, right? It is what it is. Like, can't really control when the bets are really going to go off or when they're going to miss. We can just play the favorable bets each day and know that's going to be rewarding in the long term. So good luck today. Have a good night tonight. I'm ready for Taco Tuesday. I'm ready for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of March Madness as well. It's going to be a fun week. All right, thanks for watching. Let's have a good slate. And as always, let's keep cashing.